All right, well, I ended up being called into work today on my weekend. Normally I would say, nah, but I was awake. Um, my ex was coming down to see my kid for today, so she was going to be around. I figured I might as well do some work first. Not to mention 4 hours, that's 4 hours of time and a half. July 1st was in there, so to give us stat holiday pay, so that's another 8 hours. So it's a 94-hour paycheck I'm looking at, plus that money from Amazon that I had going into the wrong account. That's all bounced back, so that should be going into the proper account this week. So that's another $170. So I'm up to about $1,400. And my child tax, thanks to the new Liberal government, is another $100 extra. So I'm going to be looking at about $1,800 over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, I could afford to go in and do 4 hours today, and I didn't mind doing it. Because whatever. And it's funny because, of all the days for my ex to be around, I was broke for 15 years, and now I'm not broke anymore. So, um, yeah, it's one of those things. Anytime I get really lonely and thinking, oh, I wish I had a girlfriend, I remember, Shannon, you have money now. You didn't have that before. And I'm sorry, I know that sounds sexist, and if there's any women watching, and I understand if you take offense, but in my experience, the one relationship I've ever had in my entire life, I spent 15 years being broke and not ordering things online and not having fun with stuff from 1986. Let's look at the Canucks. I have taken a lot of flack for making fun of the Maple Leafs, and fine, but it's not like I don't make fun of my own teams as well. Just some fans. I mean, come on. How seriously can you take the Canucks when this was their jersey and I have it? I have it. That's Thomas Gradine, the guy who lifted garbage bags. Maybe I'll get into that one today. That's in the historical book. Oh, that's underneath. All right. Now, I think the Canucks' upcoming season could be summed up by that picture of Tom Watt. Now, if that isn't a deer caught in headlights, I don't know what is. But honestly, I remember when they hired Tom Watt, and I mean, I remember Bill LaForge, and I remember how brutally awful that was. Okay, it was just awful. this see, I laugh at the Canucks too, so you Leafs fans can shut up. This this season was the tire fire of tire fires. Like it just never stopped, and it smelled bad, and it looked bad, and it was just awful. And it starts with that picture. It starts with that goofy. It's like they took what, probably a dozen pictures of Tom Watt, and then either they said, "Look, the guy's not going to make it," or they just said, "You know what? Fuck it. He can't take a good picture," and they went with that one. It's just Wiley Watt works to reverse woeful record. They can't even make a proper tongue twister out of that. I'm going to try really hard not to laugh during this, but there's one quote in here that just it is so close to my heart, and it absolutely expresses why Tom Watt was an absolute, utter, and complete failure as a coach. The Canucks were an absolute, complete, and total joke of a team at this point. And when fans talk now, they say, "Oh, the Canucks are a joke." No, these Canucks were a joke. These Canucks were terrible. This was awful. Just awful. Okay. Now, the first line. The Vancouver Canucks' interest in higher education has been renewed. Smarts. 8 months after sacking Bill LaForge and his PhD, Pride, Hustle, and Desire. See? John Cena, he should use that Pride, Hustle, and Desire, PhD, brand of hockey. The Canucks hired Tom Watt, who doesn't have a PhD but has a master's in education. This is important to remember. He has a master's in education as the article continues. Watt, a crafty coach, represents the difference between the 1984-85 and 85-86 editions of the Canucks. I'm pretty sure they had an identical record, too. So, yeah, that's the only difference. I'm pretty sure they had 59 points, both 59 points. There will be others. Former assistant Jack Gordon has taken over the duties from GM Harry Neal, his old boss, and I have a soft spot for Harry Neal as a GM. He wasn't very good, but he had the greatest quote ever, where he said, as a coach of the Canucks, "We're not very good at home. We're not very good on the road. I just haven't figured out where else we can play." uh, the Canucks have abandoned their oft-criticized sweaters for jazzy new jerseys, and by jazzy new we mean yellow with the skate on the front and the V's on the shoulders. They didn't have a nice-looking jersey yet. And several personnel changes are in the offing, which would be Cam Neely leaving for Barry Peterson coming in and trading a number 1 draft pick with him became Glenn Wesley. Absolutely wonderful trade. Watt, who was an assistant coach with the Canucks before going on to become coach of the year with the Winnipeg Jets and later to be fired, will have the most sudden impact on the team. Most teams looking for coaches are disappointed because of the year before, said Watt, who has a 3-year contract. Canucks didn't do that well, but I don't think this team is hopeless by any means. The Canucks got off to a disastrous start, 4-14-2, but if you look, they played .500 hockey or thereabouts after Harry came back. So we're competitive if we get out of the chute fast. Remember that. They played .500 hockey or thereabouts after Harry Neal came back as coach. Watt's coaching talents, one can only assume, are more impressive than his command of mathematics. That's in the article. It's right there. It's right there, okay? I'm not making this shit up. The Canucks were actually 21 wins, 32 losses, and 7 ties under Neal, which is fully 11 games under .500 hockey. Thereabouts. They were better. It was awful. It wasn't as awful. It's sort of like the Canucks were giving us straight cod liver oil for the first 20 games. They fired LaForge and they gave us Harry Neal. The cod liver oil was mixed with honey. Still tasted like shit, but it was a little sweeter. The former University of Toronto coach will be trying to make a significant lost ground. The Canucks regressed 14 points last year during his second debut with Vancouver. Among those who could be making their first debuts are first-round pick Jim Sandlak and his London Knight teammate Dave Lowry. Sandlak, a right winger, was the 4th overall choice. He brings to the Canucks considerable size, 6'3", 205, and scoring ability, 40 goals. He never scored 40. I think he scored 20 a couple times, but no. Maybe my skating might be one thing that holds me back from playing in Vancouver next season, Sandlak said at the draft. But I think I can handle it mentally and physically. Everything is done at a quicker pace. But once I get used to it, I don't think I'll have too many problems. He didn't in Vancouver. He couldn't play anywhere else, but he was okay in Vancouver. He went to Hartford for a while. It didn't work out for him. Lowry, captain of the Knights, scored 60 goals and an equal number of assists last year. Center Jeff Rolachek of the Spokane Chiefs and right winger Scott Tottle of the Peterborough Petes are 2 other prominent prospects. Tottle, I have no idea who that is. Honestly, until I read this article the other day, I had no idea who Steve Tottle was. Troy Gamble of the Medicine Hat Tigers was the Canucks' second-round selection. He may well be the man to eventually succeed current number 1 goalie Richard Brodeur. That is, unless, of course, number 2 netminder Frank Caprice provides a compelling argument to the contrary. Richard Brodeur, the starting goaltender of the Vancouver Canucks, the season before this book was printed, an .855 save percentage. Let that one sink in. .855 save percentage. .855. .855. Andre Rasico put up better numbers. That's why when people talk about greats and they put Brodeur in there for the Canucks, I understand, but I have my reservations. Brodeur had the solid run to the final in '82, and then almost punched out a cameraman after Game 1 against the Islanders in the final, which I thought was classless. But after his stats were pedestrian from there, and he was never really a great goalie. He was good at times. But I remember Rich Sutter said on, I think he was on Sportsnet, and he said that the hardest thing for him being in Vancouver was that you're playing in front of a goaltender that doesn't care. And he meant Richard Brodeur. He said when you're playing in front of a goalie who just doesn't care and doesn't make the effort, it's really hard to get yourself up and going every game, knowing that the last line of defense, couldn't care less. I thought it was a pretty damning statement by Rich Sutter, but it made a lot of sense when I look back at the 80s, because I always sort of felt like they could score. Their defense was okay, but the goaltending was just terrible. Doug Sauter, Coach of the Year in the Western Hockey League and Gamble's mentor at Medicine Hat, is high in the young goalie. No question, he's the best goaltender I've ever coached, and I've had some good ones over the years. Coach of the Year in Western. Coach of the Year, Shannon. I think he'll make an excellent pro soon. He's a hard worker, he's got a great attitude, and he wants to work on improvement. Troy Gamble would have been a great goaltender, but concussions did him in. I really liked Gamble when he first came in. I actually liked him more than Kirk McLean. He was fantastic. And then the concussion started, and it was too bad from there. Among the returnees on the Canucks defense, which allowed the most goals in the league last year, thanks Richard Brodeur, are Garth Butcher, Doug Hallward, Michel Petit, Boo Earns, J.J. Daigneault, not a Daigneault fan either, Rick Lands, and Doug Lidster, the best of the Blue Line Brigade, meaning Lidster. Of those defensemen, I liked Butcher, I liked Hallward, I liked Lands, and I liked Lidster. Never Petit or Daigneault. Didn't like either of them at all. Michel Petit ended up playing for, I think, 6 different teams, and I think Daigneault was up around that number 2. Just not good in their own zone. Vancouver's top offensive players suffered through some miserable seasons. Patrick Sundstrom, a 91-point scorer the year before, earned just 68 during the 84-85 season. Similar drop-offs occurred in production of Thomas Gradin, 78-64, and Tony Tanney, 86-59. And Gradin, I don't think, ever got back to where he'd been before, and he ended up in Boston. And Tony Tanney this was shortly before he got traded to Pittsburgh. Tanney missed 12 games due to injury. More will be expected of Cam Neely. Stan Smyl is still the heart of this team. Finnish forward Petr Skriko hinted that he may develop into a goal scorer with 21 goals in his rookie season. Europeans generally fare much better during their second seasons. What I like about him is that when he has the puck, he challenges the defenseman just about every time up the ice, said Ron Smith, the Canucks' former associate coach. Petrie's not the most physical guy in the game, but I think he'll score goals in the league, and he did. Skriko was good for 3 or 4 years, and then the wheels sort of fell off, and he ended up in Boston. That's sort of where Canucks went to die at that point, or in Neely's case, went to become a legend. Perhaps the most useful change Watt could make as head coach is to arrange for more games to go into overtime this season. The Canucks tied an NHL record last season by winning 7 games on goals during the 5-minute extra periods. So, and I don't believe there was a loser point at that time. You went into overtime, you lost the game, you lost the game. But yeah, so that's the Canucks. The Canucks that year, and that's the last year that jersey was worn as Thomas Gradin. Yeah, so he's got a master's of education and he can't do math. Yeah, that checks out. It checks out. It's legit, and it's funny because again, this book is being sarcastic and kind of nasty, and you would never see that in a book now. You'd never see it. So, this is my favorite of all of my hockey books right now. That is my favorite. Love the 1986 book, which is good because 1986 was a great year. You had Expo 86. You had music was probably at its finest in 86. And just in general, it was a good year. I got out of elementary school and my innocence was dead shortly thereafter, but it was a good summer because, then you go to middle school and then it's all, you just want to shoot yourself. But yeah, that's funny because Tom Watt, it was such a brutal time for Canucks fans. It was so whenever you think things are bad, and they could be bad this year, all right, at least you don't have Tom Watt. At least you have a coach in Willie Desjardins that if they show him, is this team 500, his answer will probably be right. So it can be worse. It has been worse. much worse. But yeah, and then Watt, I think Watt went on and coached Toronto after that. I don't remember. I think there was a lot of exchanges between Toronto and Vancouver in the 80s. There was a lot of trades. There was a lot of guys who were in one organization and up in the other. So Leafs fans, seriously, there's a bond between Vancouver and Toronto that we don't acknowledge as fans. Canucks fans aggravate Leafs fans. Leafs fans aggravate Canucks fans. But we're the same at heart. Just think about all of the leftovers from Toronto that have ended up in Vancouver and all the leftovers from Vancouver that have ended up in Toronto. And it's still happening now. It still happens. Because deep down, we need each other. Because if we can't joke about if we can't joke about the Leafs and they can't joke about us, all that's left is to joke about ourselves. And that gets kind of sad after a while. All right, that's it for my first video of the day. Hope you enjoyed it.